Imagine stepping into a mass grave of headless skeletons or even those buried with fresh hearts. These are the shocking types of nightmares that archaeologists get to see at least once in their lifetime. You never know what incredible discoveries will be uncovered in the future, but with what has been discovered in recent times, I'm sure we have much more to see. In today's video, we put together 10 of the most creepy archaeological discoveries over the last few decades, so you really don't want to miss this. Before we dive into this list, make sure to leave a like on this video. Also, if you would like to join this month's Star 5 giveaway of a brand new iPhone 12, then all you have to do is subscribe to our channel and watch this video until the end to find and comment the hidden message. Good luck! At number 10, Headless Viking in a Mass Grave. Archaeologists, in their typical way, were busy exploring what was supposed to be a boring old roadway in Dorset, except it was anything but boring. Not long after they started digging, this group of people were shocked to discover a mass grave of completely headless Vikings. The total count led up to 54, but they made even more shocking findings when they began to carefully record the positions of the bones. In the famous fashion of brave archaeologists who don't run away when they discover something this creepy, the researchers realized the heads, torsos, legs, and arms of each Viking were neatly arranged in separate piles. The initial theory was that they had been murdered by local villagers who survived attacks from Vikings and decided to take away their heads as trophies. However, this was later revised as a ritualistic event. No matter the reason for this, there's no doubt that having this sort of image in your head can give you nightmares. At number 9, baby bones in a sewer. Right under a Roman bathhouse in Israel, a group of archaeologists were about to give up on excavating a sewer when they stumbled upon one of the creepiest finds ever. From digging through poo, these researchers began to extract thousands of tiny little bones. Maybe they thought they were just chicken bones not discarded properly after humans had done justice to its flesh, but soon they realized that they might end up sharing the sewer with baby ghosts. These tiny bones in the sewer were the bodies of newborn babies dumped by their mothers from the bathhouse. These babies were mostly males, and the archaeologists realized that it's quite possible that the mothers had kept the female babies so that they could be groomed to follow in their footsteps. As terrifying as this sounds, finding a stinky river of dead babies is just another day in the life of an archaeologist. At number 8, a stake through the heart. Over the years, we have realized that our ancestors were pretty creative about how they executed anyone that didn't follow laid-down laws or who they suspected had supernatural powers. So despite how shocking it was to find a creepy body in Bulgaria straight out of a horror story, archaeologists were able to put together a little bit of how the man had died. First, he had a steel stake that went right through his chest. But it's even more awful to know that he was still alive when they cut off his legs and threw it into his tomb. These researchers believe that the Romani people suspected that he was a vampire, which wasn't such a strange superstition for the time. So they thought the only way to stop him was to drive a stake through his heart and successfully keep the evil from coming back. At number 7, a pit with severed hands. An archaeologist exploring a Hyksos palace in Egypt found 4 different spots containing pits filled with severed hands. Yes, it seems unbelievable, but absolutely true. From the analysis of these hands, which were 16 in total, they had been chopped off from unfortunate victims and then taken to the palace where they were buried underground. But there's more to this scary story. Apart from the fact that each hand belonged to a different person, which means that 16 different people had been subjected to this torture, the biggest pit was located in the throne room that was closest to the king. Now, here's the backstory to this. King Kayan, who ruled about 3,600 years ago, liked to keep a collection of severed hands of his enemies, and he made sure that they were buried close to him as a weird sign of victory over these enemies. During that era, kings would also reward soldiers with a package of gold every time they brought in severed hands of enemies. At number 6, the cursed tomb of King Tut. Remember the story of the boy king? Well, there's almost no one who doesn't know the story of King Tutankhamun, whose resting place was cursed as it had been used for several horror movies. But if you didn't believe that this was actually a thing, wait until you hear this ancient Egypt tomb exists, and all the members of the expedition that found the tomb suffered strange fates. In this tomb, there was a major inscription that said to anyone who disturbed the pharaoh would be cursed, And as soon as they broke the seal, they would die from diseases that couldn't be diagnosed by a doctor. But these archaeologists didn't think anything about these curses. You were either foolish or had balls of steel to ignore such a curse. Well, the leaders of the team in 1923, George Herbert and Howard Carter, went ahead with their exploration, and George was the first to die about 6 weeks later. At number 5, skeletons bound by iron shackles. At around 632 BC, Cyclon was a young former athlete who had a bone to pick with the ruler of Athens. His anger turned him into a tyrant, and he decided to lead a coup attempt. However, this failed miserably, but he was able to escape with his precious life. Unfortunately, we can't say the same for his friends and allies, who were quickly rounded up by the king's men. Although this event happened several centuries ago, this chapter was again opened in 2016 when a group of archaeologists discovered about 80 skeletons buried in Athens. However, the creepiest part of this find was that they were all bound by iron shackles and neatly arranged. These were the allies of Cyclon, who had been executed to serve as a deterrent to others and possibly as a way to shove Cyclon's failure in his face. At number 4, buried with hearts. In Rennes, France, researchers were puzzled about a discovery that brought more questions than answers. At a convent, there were several bodies buried with actual hearts. These hearts belonged to their loved ones and were embalmed with lead inside heart-shaped urns. Even more puzzling is the fact that this lead made sure that the hearts were properly preserved, even hundreds of years later. Of course, we have so many questions. Were the loved ones alive at the time of death of this person holding their hearts? Was this a ritual where the relatives had to be buried alongside the precious heart of their family members, whether alive or dead? Did those relatives decide individually to give their hearts to their dead loved ones? While we may not have the answers to those questions, researchers were able to carry out various tests on the hearts to determine how healthy their previous owners were. Looks like we have to look for more creative ways to say I love you. At number 3, a victim of war. About 10 years ago, some researchers unearthed 10,000 years of pain in the sediments of Lake Turkana. This area, which is known as Kenya, was the scene of a really brutal ancient warfare, which we can all agree would be quite heartbreaking. There were bones of 27 people, including women and children, who had all died of trauma. Since there was evidence to show that they were hit by arrows and blunt weapons like clubs until they died, there's no doubt about the nature of their death. And it was definitely not a domestic dispute. One of the women had both her knees broken violently. With her hands stretched in front of her like they'd been bound, one can only imagine what torture she experienced thousands of years ago. At number 2, teeth in the pelvis. You may expect that there's only one place teeth should grow, but the human body is so complex that it sometimes defies the basic laws of biology. And that was the case when Spanish archaeologists discovered the skeleton of a woman with actual teeth in her pelvis. This Roman woman, who was estimated to be about 1,600 years old, was a victim of ovarian teratoma. This tumor is formed from germ cells, and these same cells are responsible for human egg cells, so it's not so surprising that they can form some body parts. However, her pelvis had 4 of these malformed teeth between her hips, but she may not have seen this before she died. Still, there's no doubt that complications from this tumor killed her. And at number 1, sacrifice for the palace. While many researchers were still trying to guess if ancient Koreans engaged in sacrificial killing as there was limited evidence, they stumbled on a discovery that finally put their guesses to rest. This was the grisly remains of a woman who may have died more than 1,600 years ago. But what was creepy about this discovery was the nature of her death. This woman died in the 4th century AD during the construction of the Great Palace of Joseon, as it was believed that human sacrifices would help the building last longer against enemies. However, that would not be the first time that archaeologists would uncover bodies in this region, as they found 2 earlier. All 3 were close to the main entrance of the palace, and they were women who were put there to protect the front walls against enemy advances. The Silla people of ancient Korea believed the myth that sacrifices during building projects would make the structure stronger, but there's still so much to understand. And with that, we end today's video. Is there any creepier archaeological discoveries that you can think of that should have made it onto this list? Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe and give us a like, and don't forget to turn on your post notifications so you never miss another video from Star 5. Thanks for watching.